Well, we begin on a sad note where Kenya's envoy to South Sudan, Ambassador Chris Karumba Mburu, passed on Monday. The diplomat died in Juba Sunday night, according to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Mburu, who once served as a director at the National Intelligence Service, is said to have suffered a heart attack leading to his death. He was named Kenya's diplomat to South Sudan in 2018 and vetted by the National Assembly's Defense and Foreign Relations Committee. Mburu accompanied the South Sudan leader Salva Kiir on Tuesday, February the 11th, during the state funeral of retired President Arap Moi at the Nyayo Sports Complex in Nairobi. President Uhuru Kenyatta sent a message of condolence to his family, relatives and friends on Monday, saying he was a shining star whose service to the nation will be dearly missed. Death, quote-unquote, has robbed us of a great public servant who served his country with distinction since his appointment as our envoy to Juba. Ambassador Mburu has worked hard to ensure free flow of trade and investment between Kenya and South Sudan, the president said also in a statement. And we want to also move on to South Sudan because of that particular peace truce that now has scuppered because of differences with Riek Machar and Salva Kiir, and a special representative of the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and head of UN mission in South Sudan on Monday urged the warring parties to form a transitional government on time. There's a statement he said that the formation of an inclusive transitional government will inspire greater trust and confidence among citizens that the peace process will succeed and that the parties will come together to make decisions collectively. He said also in a statement that last week, decision to return to 10 states is an important step that will enable the formation of a transitional government as promised to the South Sudanese people. And we know last week what really happened. South Sudan's President Salva Kiir had announced that he will return to a system of 10 states, which is a key opposition demand paving the way for a unity government and an end to the country's civil war. Kiir said the country will now be divided among the 10 states plus 3 administrative areas of Pibor, Ruweng and Abyei. But that now we know has changed since that particular development with Riek Machar. We want just to go to a panelist on this before we move on to other topics. First of all, to just give you a moment to pay your tributes to Ambassador Mburu with this particular development as well, who passed on Monday. Let's just begin with you, Peter Kagwanja, from the diplomatic circles. Maybe you were intimately familiar with Ambassador?
Yes, I
do.
Please. I was also familiar with the previous one, Rashore, who is also my PhD student now at the University of Nairobi. Interesting. And so we really mourn and we condole with the family of the Ambassador Mburu. Very, very brilliant person. I mean, very person who really understands Kenya and its interest and who has served it very, very well in South Sudan. And it's a pity that we have to suffer such kind of a loss as a country. We regret that. And given his position and his knowledge of the country, he was a pivotal figure in the peace process in South Sudan. Because as you know, Kenya decided to play behind the curtains kind of role, which is very, very important. The president and the country has been in the forefront, but because of our role in that country, we decided to do more of the smart power, or rather, if you say the soft power, very behind but very strong. And these are the pillars of this kind of strategy that is working very well in Sudan. So we mourn him deeply.
All right. Well, the South Sudan is in the national security interest of Kenya. President in the United States compared Kenya to the pace setters to get other countries to come into the East African home. And of course, Mr. Mburu, I believe, came from the late Mr. Mburu, and I pass my condolences to his family and to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and to the President and the Foreign Minister. I think is from the intelligence community, and the important thing is that his contribution has been well put by Mr. Kagwanja, but I think that the larger perspective, if if I can disagree a little bit with my learned senior friend. South Sudan is really just, part and parcel of Kenya. I mean, it's and Kenya is part and parcel of South Sudan. I mean, my mental framework about this issue is to not to think outside the box, but to actually think without a box. And the interests of South Sudan and the interests of Kenya are linked in fundamental ways.
Thank you.
And Dabal, I want to make one last point. I think that I think the question in Sudan today, both in South Sudan and Sudan proper, is whether or not the South Sudan's sovereignty and national independence is now under question.
Thank you, thank you.
We'll
come to that. I just wanted us to get, to offer our tributes and condolences to the family, and just to remember him as well. Then we'll gravitate to that particular discussion as well. Right, let's hear from Dr. Hassan Kanenje.
It's always a bit close to a country when you lose such an experienced diplomat so suddenly, without any notification, not like death notifies, but sometimes there are situations where you actually expect that someone might not make it, but this was a heart attack. And I only encountered him once actually, and he sounded to be a very amiable person, a true diplomat, and he understood the world because, he served in the capacity, within the service with regard to the external intelligence, and he understood the world pretty well, and it's a big loss to Kenya, and our thoughts and prayers go to his family.
Thank you. Brigadier General?
Yes, our condolences, a good friend. I also worked with him, a very focused person, and indeed served with distinction. Really, our condolences to the family during this period of mourning.
Right. Nomi Damba.
Well, I only met him once at a conference, and I had a brief discussion about it. And I came out very impressed with his knowledge, particularly of South Sudan and the environment, particularly of Africa. So this is a big loss for the nation, and particularly for the family.
Dr. Mustapha.
Dibal, my condolences to late Mburu's family. I recall one discussion talking about Juba. And who would actually, be the person that goes to such a difficult post. And of course, Mburu was one of the natural candidates to go to these difficult posts. And I think part of the challenges, such a post like in Juba exerts a lot of pressure on individuals, particularly diplomats that have to do this kind of work. We congratulate him posthumously for the good work that he did, and to his family, condolences. Tunasema pole.
All right. All right, and also from NTV, we pass on also our deepest sympathies and condolences as well, Pole Sana, familia Mburu. But we want to now look at the greater situation also with the development in South Sudan as it is right now. We thought we had a happy medium. We had an announcement from Salva Kiir, and what they really said that, yes, now we are gravitating back to 10 states, because I think that for the 32 it was a bit unconstitutional. And we thought now that was a solution. This is the month they're supposed to be coming up with a transitional government. It seems that will not really happen. Now we have this UN diplomat now coming to the fore and saying we need to have that transitional government. Peter Kagwanja.
Now, the story of South Sudan is a very sad one, in the sense that this is Africa's youngest state. So it's the proverbial child that grows a teeth that can't eat food, the first one. And it is a pity. The second one is that the solution offered to South Sudan is the classic Riboro solution, power sharing. And so South Sudan is suffering the tragedy of power sharings in Africa, which we in Kenya have also gone through, whereby it tends to reinforce conflict, because the more you fight, the more you are included into the negotiation table. And therefore, outside Riek Machar and Salva Kiir, we have other rebels now who are fighting so viciously, so they become part of the deal. So we need to understand that dilemma and begin to ask as thinkers and policy makers about how do we resolve this question. And I think this is the debate we're having in Kenya about BBI, beyond power sharing, which tends to reinforce insurgency. The more you kill, the more you look dangerous, and the more you are brought to the table to negotiate. So the incentive is not to solve things, the incentive is to fight. Now, the dispute over the states the 32 versus 10, Salva kills, was borrowing from Kenya. As she said, that South Sudan, Kenya, I tend to agree with you on that. From 8 provinces to 32 counties. For us, it was 8 to 47 counties. Yeah, yes. For them, it is from 10 provinces to 32, in order to localize administration and so on. But that was interpreted by Riek Machar as a way of Salva Kiir entrenching himself, because he's now going to devolve resources and power and all that, and therefore will take advantage. But now, for the sake of unity, that has been receded. Now they are back to 10, but they are now again disputing the whole question of these administrations. Yeah. In other words, they want the status quo. I think Salva Kiir doesn't have to introduce the administrations, can deal with them, so that on the 22nd of February, which is just a few days, 2 or so days away, that South Sudan can get to the transitional government, and possibly we hope that will get us to a new administration.
When was the deadline? Was it
February 22nd of February?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Dabal, the two protagonists in South Sudan, the president and the deputy president, former, are using, once the international community and the regional states intervene in a political conflict, of course, the whole dynamics of negotiation and trying to make political points becomes exacerbated, because everybody knows that there are referees in the system. And once there's a referee, everybody expects to get something out of the cake. But I think that the critical point, Dabal, is really the character of the leaders in South Sudan, and the whole question of Sudan. You have noticed that the Sudanese government and its people have decided to hand over General Bashir to the International Criminal Court. I think it's one of the things that I've always opposed, but that's not the issue here today. And I think that the people of Sudan, Dabal, Northern Sudan, and the people of South Sudan are one people, one history, one relationship. And I think some of the most important people who are helping in the peace process there are the people of Northern Sudan, particularly their leaders, because they understand the psyche of the people in South Sudan. And I also believe, Dabal, that if we continue, if these two guys don't have a deal on the February 22nd, it will be a real disaster for diplomacy in this region, because everything is counting on making sure that there is a deal. I believe that there will be a deal, because they have come so far into the process that getting out of it now is going to make one or the other look so bad politically that they might lose a lot. So I think this is posturing. I think that the deal will be signed on February 22nd, and everybody's just trying to get the last minute tidbits that they can get out of the table. And I think that the person who should be big and should have gravitas is the president, Salva Kiir. He is going to retain his post. He is going to retain power as commander-in-chief of the armed forces to a certain extent, and he should be more giving to Riek Machar than being regressive about that issue.
Right. Brigadier.
I have apparently been the center of this issue for quite a while. In 2013, when the problem started in December, I was in New York as the chief of staff at the UN. And of course in 2016 also, when again second round came and Riek Machar left, I was again in New York, and we were following trends very, very closely. And my feeling is that the underlying issues are still there. The agreement is on, but underlying issues are still a problem, in the sense that, one, a lot of arms in South Sudan, a lot of them. In fact, statistics unconfirmed say almost 300,000 arms in the wrong hands on both sides.
300,000?
Yes, and they want to reduce that to only...
That's an eye-popping figure.
The new army, if agreed on, is about 83,000. That remains our challenge. But two key issues. One, the fact that their politics is tied on ethnicity. And what my friend was called earlier, the issue of tying of numbers. Ethnicity is the Noir against the Dinka. One. Number two, the issue of a very powerful presidency. That as Machar comes in, Riek Machar can do anything. He can do exact 2016, same thing. Because he has his people, and he has the numbers, He is the commander-in-chief. He can do anything. So to me, these underlying issues need to be addressed to find a better, comfortable, accommodative agreement for both of them, almost at par, but one cannot do something which is offensive to the other. I feel so. Now, the issue of 10 against 32, I would say at that time, of course, when it was announced, Riek Machar was out of the country. He had left, he had gone away and he was out when it was announced. Now, we are agreeing on 10. And then among the 10, we are saying 3 will be administrative. Why? Simply because of resources. Why? Because I believe most of them are in the Nuer areas. We definitely will go to Riek Machar. And therefore, this issue of push and pull still remains a fair agreement, sitting together, which is good for all of them. I believe is the better way to go around this.
Right. We can also rope in Asad Khanenje, but I wanted also to question the issue around Rueng, because I think also Rueng is exacerbating the whole situation because of all, it was a rich depository of oil. Yes. Dr. Hassan Khanenje?
African leaders have always used state resources for patron clientelist kind of politics to control. And moving or shrinking the states from 32 to 10, but then creating 3 more these regions is actually in a bid to ensure they still have access and control of over those resources. Now, what can we do in the light of the pending agreement, or rather peace, that is supposed to come in 3 days? For any peace in the history and practice of peacemaking in the world, for any peace to stick, there always have to be some external carrots and sticks that are credible. And so when the international community talks about we are going to impose sanctions for those parties who will not abide by the agreement, we better be serious about it, starting with the region and the African Union and the United Nations. Correct. If we don't have that resolve and commitment to actually do that, these guys are just going to take us for granted. And I don't even see the Pope visiting this year as he had promised, in the hope there's going to be peace in South Sudan. We know where they're coming from. It's an intractable conflict with parties that have very big egos. They don't care so much about people of South Sudan. So we have to be ready with sticks to actually enforce that, but also with some carrots to help them reconstruct, or at least to rehabilitate those ones who are willing to join the bandwagon of peace in South Sudan.
Thank you.
I completely agree with our friends, particularly the general, put it on the nail. Let us note, and there is a domestic actors and international actors on one hand. And let us not underestimate the kind of force that international actors are having. They're bringing all kind of weapon in the system. The more there is chaos, the better it is for their business. And inside these domestic things are a band of thugs that are running. Some of them are calling themselves general. They're not general, they're thugs. Then they're running around, collecting group of people, and once show up at the table, every one of them want to be chief. There got to be only one chief in one village in order for the place to run.
Right. We need to finalize on this, Mustapha.
Yeah, it appears that Salva Kiir was a very good student of the late Daniel Arap Moi. By increasing the number of administrative districts of states to 32, I think Moi used to do the same thing. Unfortunately, this kind of politics will not work in today, so it cannot. These two, first of all, we have consistently said on this podium that Salva Kiir and Riek Machar, their time is up. I hope they sign this agreement, Dibal, and just leave or prepare another. There are many leaders who can take over from them. Their time in the bush and the way they are leading South Sudan at this time, it's not going to take South Sudan anywhere. And it's pitiful, Dibal, it's shameful that the Pope knelt before these two at the Vatican and appeal to them to put the lives of South Sudanese before their personal interests. These are tribal entrepreneurs, and of course we have no shortage of tribal entrepreneurs around Africa. We have many in Kenya. These two, for the Dinkas and the Nuers, there are many tribes in South Sudan, not just the Dinkas and the Nuers. They just happen to be big tribes. And I agree with my colleagues that the big stick should be wielded by the states in the region, including the Africa Union. They have to be now giving them, these two leaders, ultimatums that they have to put the lives of the people of South Sudan before any of their parochial interests.
Right, thank you. So come February the 22nd, let's just play out the scenarios. If both of them, they are holding their lines, what next?
Well, the sanctions kick in.
Let's just begin with sequentially, please.
First and foremost, this will not be the first time they have renegade.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think there's a kind of a sense of impunity kicking in. Because in 2015, we celebrated the peace, the Addis Ababa Peace Accord, and we all expected that, you know, that's solved. Then we have September 2018, we have the so-called revised peace agreement. Yes, revitalized peace agreement. And there was a lot of pomp around it, and Riek was in the region. We were hoping he was going back. He talked about his insecurity, and that's it. Last year, there were discussions about his coming back. And now we are approaching the deadline of the implementation of this particular accord, and nothing is happening. I think two things need to happen. First, the case of South Sudan is beginning to become the kind of the Agora scenario between Jonas Savimbi and the regime in Rwanda. Yes, it's beginning to become like that. Wow. And the Agoran situation was only solved through the military victory. If we don't envisage a military victory in South Sudan, we need to get the two leaders out. And getting the two leaders out means, as we get to 22nd February, which is 3 days away, we have to build into this agreement the element that the two can only hand over, they cannot take over.
Absolutely. Right.
Because as long as Riek, Salva Kiir knows that Riek is going to take over, he fears retribution. Now, Riek Machar is fearing that if he goes there, he's going to be victimized. So both, they have gone to the depth of suspicion that they have put the country in jeopardy. They need to go, both of them.
Well, I see Mr. Kagwanja, Professor Kagwanja's point. I see it clearly, actually. But I'm reminded of the situation in Somalia some time ago. So when you had one warlord who had a clan, and when that warlord was either chased by the Americans, arrested, or something happened to him, the next clan leader just came up and took over his position. So there's a whole line of people behind Riek Machar and Salva Kiir, who the minute they get out, are going to want to fill that vacuum. So I think, as my political mind is telling me, that there's no question in my mind that we have to work with Salva Kiir and we have to work with Riek Machar. They just have to see the light, because the ultimate ends of these two men is to have political power, and they're going to do anything and everything to get it. Of course, the psychology of the African politician has been so elucidly explained by the great Frantz Fanon, is that they all want to be paramount chiefs. And this complex of paramount chieftaincy is enigmatic here in South Sudan. However, I agree with the last point that Professor Kagwanja spoke about. I think that if they try to renege on this peace deal on February 22nd, I think that the region should get its military act together. I think that, and I know the mentality of the people of South Sudan. We are neighbors, we are friends, we visit, we are connected at the hip. They respect power. They respect it, and they don't respect weaknesses. And if we play around with that Debal, these guys are going to start that nonsense again. And you know, Debal, the amount of people who have died in this conflict is close to 400,000 people, and they're mostly women and children. In any other legitimate, situation, those guys would have gone to a criminal court and be put away forever. But we need them. to make the peace, we need them to be in the state, and after that, we need to find a transition with leaders like the ones who are sitting in this.
In 2015-16, we had a lot of hope on the reverse agreement on the resolution of the conflict in South Sudan. It was very promising, and the two parties came together. In fact, they formed government that time. And a very small issue sparked the war, and strong fighting came up in Juba, and Riek Machar had to leave at that time. And we are told at that time, one of the major issues that tied down Salva Kiir's hand was a very powerful chief of the armed forces, General Malong. And Malong said, quietly behind the scene, he said, no way, you go ahead and do, but it should not happen. Now, this time, to me, the environment is good. Both of them are not under pressure from their supporters below, who are so strong as to drive them. They're able to make independent thoughts and move on. But as I said earlier, the underlying issues are still there. And I strongly believe that the only best answer to this is time for the two is over. The two need to leave the scene, the others come in and build a new and better South Sudan.
Right, thank you. Finally on it, Dr. Mustapha.
Adibal, I think we've exhausted this point, and in fact the options on the table are very clear, or rather should be very clear. General, Professor, Hashi all mentioned this, that let's have both the carrots and sticks on the table, even as they're signing this. And let it be very clear to those two leaders that we need them to sign this peace agreement.
Thank you.
And transition, prepare for a transition.
Thank you.